All right, today we are very lucky to have Max Tissenbaum with us. Good friend of all of our coaches, and he has a very interesting journey and story. So we're very fortunate. We thank you for coming on with us. A little background to Max: he played for the Canadian junior national team. He was drafted out of high school by the Toronto Blue Jays, but he ended up going to Division I Stony Brook. He won numerous awards at Stony Brook. I'll just name a few. He was a All-American East first team guy, All Northeast Region second team ABCA, third team All-American ABCA, and he also was in the World Series, College World Series. After that college career, he got drafted by the Padres in the 11th round, and then he went on to play with the Padres, Tampa Bay, and the Marlins. So there's more I could add, but I think that's a good background for Max. So thank you very much for coming on with us.
No problem.
So we wanted to start off kind of from the beginning. So as we said, you're from Canada. You have a unique recruiting process. So for your recruiting process overseas, can you explain that a little bit as far as interest from American schools and, was it the transferring over, the paperwork hard and just some of that background?
Yeah, so when I was in high school, there were a couple of different routes that you could go in terms of getting exposure. You could go with one of those classic travel teams that was, down in the U.S. for 2 months at a time, missing a ton of school, but playing a ton of games on the road, almost doing like remote schooling, just to be in front of coaches, scouts, and stuff like that all the time. I didn't go that route. School was always really important to me, to my family. So I was playing for a team that was a little bit more local. I'm going to say if we played 10 games in the U.S. in my entire high school career, that would be on like the high end. So for guys that chose teams like that, it was mostly about trying to get into one big showcase in Canada, which is for your Canada Cup year. So when you're 17, they have like an all-star tournament for all of the provinces. They put together an all-star team in each province. Then they have a tournament that basically serves as the selection camp for Team Canada for the following year. So I was invited to that as a 16-year-old to the main tryout, which was a huge honor. They only have, a handful of 16-year-olds every year. Coach Panucci actually saw me as a 16-year-old. And it's kind of a funny story with that because when I was in, middle school, high school, I had this huge curly afro. And so as a 16-year-old, I went out, I played, I've got this afro under my hat and whatever. And he told me later on, he came back the following year when I was a 17-year-old, I cut my hair down, look a little bit more professional. He said to me, he had asked some of the other coaches who the new shortstop was from my team. And they all said, no, it's the same kid with the curly hair from last year. So that was like kind of a running joke with us. Like, oh, I never would have let you play for me with that curly hair. So again, I had some people see me there. As a 17-year-old, I made that team, got to play in the Canada Cup. And from there, like you said, made Team Canada. And that kind of puts you on the map with the pro scouts. You're playing against the Dominican Summer League for one trip. You play against instructional league teams, extended spring training teams. So there you're at the complex, you're in front of their coaches, their scouts and everything like that. And from there, I think we're just kind of got around in terms of like the college side. I started getting a lot of mail from different schools after my first Team Canada trip. And it went from being like one of those, really focused in the Northeast to like all of a sudden I had like a letter from UCLA. I had a letter from Coastal Carolina, all over the country. And so it was, a big process of trying to figure out what I wanted, where I wanted to be, and sort of how to go about it.
Now, when you got to Stony Brook, was it everything you expected? Was the transition easy? Was it tough? Kind of take us through the whole thing of once you got there.
Yeah, it was everything that I thought it would be in terms of school and in terms of like, oh, now I'm down and I'm living on my own. Like that kind of growing up aspect of going away to college. I tried to do as much sort of research as I could once I committed. Like I was in touch with Chad Marshall pretty frequently. He was the shortstop, also a Canadian guy. He was a couple years ahead of me. So I had, somebody to bounce some questions off of just to kind of go in feeling a little bit more comfortable. Like I had asked him about, stuff like meal plans and scheduling your classes and all this stuff that kind of helps you just not have so many like outside things to focus on. Just go in, go to class, go to practice. So it was good to have somebody like that. I think the biggest adjustment for me was just going from like, I was a kid who used to go to the field by myself every day after school. My team would practice, 1 or 2 times a week and then play our games on the weekends. And then you get to college, you go through your first week of classes and then practice starts. And all of a sudden you're in front of the coaching staff 6 days a week, sometimes 7 days a week, depending on how the schedule shakes out. And it goes from being like, in high school, I was able to sort of like not mess around, but like I could be out there by myself in the cage, just working on something. I didn't have any eyes on me. It was just, me and my tee. Now all of a sudden I've got, 4 coaches. I've got all the seniors, all the other freshmen that I'm competing with. So having that like huge volume of just every single day having to be like really on top of your game, that was, I think, the biggest thing that kind of surprised me right away.
All right. So during your college career, you were on some really good teams at Stony Brook. But that one year you had your magical run to the College World Series. You were all over Sports Center, and me as a former alumni, we thank you for that, because all of a sudden all my old Cape teammates and guys that, were big time were reaching out to me and, hey, Stony Brook, so, thank you for that. But, can you kind of talk about that team and that journey? And, was it something that you guys knew you were capable of, or did it take time throughout the year to kind of break that barrier as a Northeast school to not just make the tournament, which everyone does, but to, really take over get into that super regional and beyond?
Yeah, I kind of take it back even to 2011 with how our program sort of progressed, because I think in 11 we actually might have even had a better team. I think we were like 42-12. We beat some really good teams early in the year. We played pretty close with North Carolina. We had some votes in the top 25 because we had some crazy winning streak. And then we got to the conference tournament, hosted it on, the brand new field, and we just completely collapsed. And obviously being from a small conference, you don't get in that large bid just for having a good year. And so I think everybody kind of left that season, all the guys that we knew were going to come back, with like a real serious chip on our shoulder that, we deserved better than that. We should have probably gotten an at-large if we were in another conference. And then like Coach Panucci, Coach Marin, Coach Sank had done an unbelievable job. We had 7 guys go to the Cape that summer. So I think as that all kind of snowballed, you go from having that big year, now we're all competing against those, SEC, Pac-12, Big 12, Big 10, all those guys in summer ball. Travis comes out, he wins the MVP of the Cape League that summer. Tanner was in the home run derby. A couple other guys were in the All-Star game as well. And so when we came back, it's kind of like, we have a lot of guys that belong at that level. Not just that kind of got there because they knew somebody. Like, these guys can play. So then we get back and practice starts, and it's like it was a circus act the entire year, because obviously with Travis being the Cape MVP, he's projected to be, top 1, 2, 3 round pick. So pretty much all fall we had anywhere from 20 to 40, 50 scouts, cross-checkers. We had a few GMs stop by. And that was like every day at practice. So you go from, having your regular coaching staff there. Now you've got all these pro scouts just everywhere. Like, there were days that guys would get down to the field early and the scouts were already standing there waiting just to like see when guys got down there. So it was a little bit different than the previous years when we, scout day, we'd have 5, 6 guys just to come in and see like 1 or 2 players. I remembered the year being like a steamroll. We just beat everybody. But I look back on it and we were like a 500 team through our first probably month and a half. Like we swept one weekend, we got swept the next, split. So it wasn't exactly how I thought I remembered it. But once we hit conference, it was just like an absolute, just everything clicked. We had pitching that was aggressive and just dominant. Our lineup was pretty ridiculous for most of the season, 1 through 9. Like there really wasn't that, typical 7, 8, 9 fall off at the end of the order. And it got to a point where we were just like, we know we're going to win the conference regular season. We know we're going to host a tournament. We know we should win the tournament, and we know that we should go in and like make some noise in whatever regional we go to. We got to the selection show after winning the conference tournament, and we were all kind of expecting to be a 3 seed. Like we had, again, received top 25 votes. We had like another crazy record, 21-3 in conference. And they come out, 7 national seed Miami, and the 4 seed is Stony Brook. And we were all kind of sitting there going like, what do we have to do to not be a 4 seed at a nationally ranked team? And again, you talk about that chip on the shoulder. Everybody just kind of went like, no, this is wrong. Like, this is wrong. We shouldn't be there. We're better than that. And so we got down there, and it was like, people were texting around like Operation Takeover Miami and all this kind of stuff, like just in the group chats and stuff. And so we went in there just like, no, we're beating Miami. Like it's not even a question. We're going to go out there and we're going to beat them. We lost that second game to Central Florida, but came right back. We beat Missouri State, beat Central Florida twice. And it's like, all of a sudden we're sitting there at the end and we're going like, we just did that. Didn't even come back to campus, went straight to New Orleans, drove out to Baton Rouge from Miami, which was kind of wild because that was the first time we never like regrouped at campus and had a practice at home. Went right out there. All of a sudden the media is now ratcheted up a little bit because who's Stony Brook and what are they doing at LSU? Playing in front of 10 to 12,000 fans in purple game 1, yellow game 2, yellow game 3, like color coordinated and everything. And like you get out there in game 1, it's just like, this is what you dream of as a college baseball player. Like whether you're playing at a Northeast school that you just get down there for a opening weekend series, or whether you're playing there in a regional, like this is where you want to be. And that was really that was the first time that I ever found myself at any level of baseball actually taking the time to like take it all in and sort of like recognize what was going on. I know like there were a couple of times where I was standing out there and you could hear like, go Tigers, like from the first and third base stands, like back and forth. And you're like, you can almost like feel the noise coming back and forth. It's just like, man, this is cool. And then to come out of there with that series and everything, knowing that we're going to the World Series, I blacked out during the dog pile. I had so many friends text me after that and go like, what did you do? And I had no idea what they were talking about. I went back and I watched it, and I just kind of like walked over like and just fell. Everybody else is like jumping and throwing their stuff all over. I literally just like couldn't believe that it had happened. Just fell on the side of the dog pile, like, whoa. So it was unbelievable. And then Omaha is something next level. Like that was one of the coolest experiences I think I'll ever have. Totally different from LSU because you go from having that like hometown crowd to just like baseball fans everywhere. But it was something crazy. That whole month was just a wild ride.
So
I just have a quick follow up because when that first game at LSU, we had group texts with all our Stony Brook teammates and stuff, and I want to say you guys blew 3 leads, right? And went into extra innings where
8th, 9th, and 10th inning. Yep.
Right. So for us as alumni, when that you came back that next day and ended up losing, it was kind of for us looking like, oh man, like I don't know, because they're such a national technical power, like can they come back? And you guys didn't. Those were the only innings. I think the inning you lost was the only inning you were down the whole series. So yeah. Was there any doubt going into that second game, or were you guys still with that, like, we could do this?
No, I don't think there was any doubt in that game. I know that it was really like a singular focus. We knew why we were there. We weren't just there to get beaten and go home. So I don't think that anybody was really sitting there kind of writing the end of the script. I know there was a play in, I think, the 8th or 9th inning of that first game. It was right before they scored one of the tying runs. We dropped the fly ball in foul territory, and I remember that like I saw it land and I just went, oh no, that's it. Because like again, you go down there and you're playing against, number 3 and in front of their fans in their stadium, and you're just going like, that's the mistake that coach always talks about. You can't give them that one extra out and then like bang, home run, next inning, bang, home run, next inning, bang, another one. And you're like, what do you have to do to beat these guys? But then I think the good thing with how that series broke out with the rain delay was that we didn't have time to really think about it at all. Like it was almost like a doubleheader, which I know we have more experience than a lot of those teams do because we play them every weekend. They probably don't do that as often with their stadiums and their schedules and selling tickets. So for us, it was like we packed our stuff, walked across to the first base dugout, had a Gatorade and a half a sandwich, and said, okay, let's go. And you get a guy like Kevin Courtney, who was our 7-hole hitter, totally out of the blue. He's the guy that hits a home run off of the number 4 overall pick in the draft that year. And that's like the huge moment. It's like, oh my God, he just hit a bomb. We're winning again. And you kind of keep building that confidence. Like, you know what, we've gone shot for shot with them the whole time. Like you said, like they only led for one at bat. And so as it kind of went, it was more of that, like, yeah, we can do this. Yeah, we belong. Yeah, we should beat them. And I think that was part of why I had such a crazy reaction at the end, was because it was like you could finally breathe. Like you could feel the weight of the moment, because it was like, this is so big if we can pull this off. And then when it finally happened, it was just like, oh my God, we did it. So yeah, it was a crazy 3 days.
So to piggyback on that, the draft's about to happen. You're going to the College World Series, and then you end up getting selected by the Padres. Did you kind of have time to enjoy either side of it? Did you have time to enjoy getting drafted with either your family or your teammates? Did you have time to enjoy the whole College World Series experience, or was it kind of the same as you were just talking about, where there's a lot of weight on you and you were kind of stressed?
I think we got really lucky with how it all broke out. So because we had to go to the final game, like we had to beat Central Florida twice in the regional to go through. That final game was on Monday night, which was when the draft started. So we finished that game. We win the regional. We're all celebrating with our team, our families that were down there. And then we went out to the bus to wait for coach to finish his media availability. And obviously with it being such a huge accomplishment, he's in there for who knows how long. Like it was a really long media break, I guess. And while we were standing in the parking lot waiting, it's again, the players and all the families, Travis Jankowski, our center fielder, gets his phone call from the Padres. We just drafted you in the supplemental first round. So we all got to share that with him. So it was a huge celebration again right after the game. Following morning, we wake up, get on the bus to go to the airport. And as we're loading the bus, Pat Cantwell, our catcher, gets picked in the 3rd round. So again, all together, some of the families were still there. Then we flew to New Orleans, and that was the most miserable flight I've ever been on, because like, again, the draft is going on. All of us have been watching every single pick while we're sitting at the gate waiting, and you're texting your advisor and you're hearing from your scouts that you talk to and everything. And that was the year that they changed the draft to like the slotting system. So nobody really knew who was going to get picked where. Like you heard different things from people. And then all of a sudden it's like, all right, shut your phone off. We're taking off. And the rest of us hadn't been picked yet. And we're going like, no, this sucks. This is 3 hours of just blackout. And we get to New Orleans, turn our phones back on, and I'm like refreshing everything. Like, did something happen? Did anybody get picked? Nothing. We get down to baggage claim. My phone rings. I got picked. And so again, that was just, the team and the coaches. Right after that, Willie Carmona, also in the 11th, James Campbell in the 12th. So we were all actually like in the airport on the bus or just checking into the hotel when we got our calls, which was really special for me because, like, again, you go through all of these experiences, living together, training together, playing together, and then you get that like individual accomplishment to be able to kind of share that with those guys was really, really cool for me.
Yeah, it's like a unique experience where they're your family, and that's an awesome story.
Yeah. So yeah, like, again, you did get to really enjoy it because like it was, I'm gonna say 2 or 3 days before that super regional. So like we had that most of that week to kind of like settle in and like take the first call with your scout that drafted you and talk to your parents. And I know like a lot of the guys were looking up, where's the rookie ball team that I'm gonna go to and stuff like that. So like by the time that we were like settled in our hotel rooms in Baton Rouge, I knew based on what the scout told me, like once you finish, you're going to come out to Arizona, you'll sign your contract, and then we're going to send you out to Eugene to play short season A. And like, I looked at their stadium, looked at their uniforms, like you kind of had that time to just like envision it where you're like, wow, that's where I'm going to be in, a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever it takes. So there was some time to kind of relax and enjoy it.
That's awesome.
Yeah. All right. So now kind of gearing to that transition from college to pro baseball, I'm sure there's a million differences you could talk about, but was there one thing that kind of stood out to you baseball wise that was the biggest adjustment for you, or something that was very different from the college game?
Yeah, I thought the weird thing right away was how the coaches wanted everything slowed down. Like I went from high school to college and everything about defense was speed up. Everything about base running was speed up. Everything was pick up the pace, go faster on the stopwatches and stuff like that. And then I got down to Arizona and I was working out with the rookie ball team at the complex because I had to wait on a visa, again, part of being Canadian. And I'm working with the infield coordinator one day and he like hit me a ground ball. I picked it up, made the play cleanly, like thought everything was good. He comes walking over to me. He goes, "Who lit your shoes on fire?" I'm like, "What do you mean?" He goes, you're so out of control fast. Slow down. I'm like, slow down? Like Coach Panucci would never tell me to slow down. He was always telling me faster, 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 faster. So understanding that it was more about hitting every single like little thing properly, even if it meant doing it at 70% speed in practice. That was a big one for me to just kind of learn how to control my practice reps, slow down, and then speed it up when it was time to actually speed it up. So like, that was one that just like initially was like, slow down, okay? Because you always hear it gets faster every level that you go up. It gets faster, but breaking it down into its smallest parts, you got to move slowly.
So you were always a middle infielder at Stony Brook, I'm sure in high school and when you first got the pro ball. How was the transition to a catcher, and were you for it, against it? Kind of take us through how that all happened.
Yeah, so I can go back to when I was 13, the first time I actually was told I should be a catcher. I was a shortstop my whole life. I was not anywhere close to fast enough, but I was smart enough to sort of know how to shade hitters, know how to like read pitchers and swings and stuff like that. So I stuck at shortstop my whole life. But from the time I was 13, there was somebody every year that said, you really should look into catching because you profile better there down the road. And my answer was always like, eventually somebody will drag me there kicking and screaming. And at that point, I'll do it. So I finished my second season, my first full year in the minors. I see the list of guys going to instructional league and I'm on there. Okay, great. Like that's usually what happens. You go to, 1 or 2 instructional leagues. And I get called into the manager's office with one of the coordinators and he says to me, "You know why you're going to instruct?" And I said, "Yeah, to get some extra reps, get ready for next year." And he says, "No, we're going to have you go down there as a catcher." I'm like, okay, here it is. So it wasn't really like a for or against. I knew it was going to happen eventually, and like in most likely. Got down to, we actually had our instructs that year in the Dominican at the Padres Academy because they were redoing the spring training facility. So we get down there, and I remember this like it was yesterday. They say, okay, infielders on field 1, outfielders on field 2, pitchers and catchers go to the bullpen. And I walked over to one of the coaches that I knew pretty well, and I said to him, like, what do you guys want me to do? He goes, oh, just head up to the bullpen and do your thing. And I like my thing's on field 1 with the infielders. I have no idea what I'm doing. And I spent that like 3 weeks down there, just like every single pitch that cut or sunk, depending on lefty, righty, I was getting thumbed. I couldn't block a single thing. Like I was stiff. I was uncomfortable. Like it was a really painful month just because like you don't know the spacing between the hitter and the catcher. You end up getting hit with a foul tip. You end up getting hit with a bat, like on a backswing. So that first introduction to it really sucked. That winter I got traded to the Rays, got down to spring training, and they said the same thing. You're coming here as a catcher. We didn't trade for you as an infielder. Okay, fine. Still snuck my infielder's gloves into my bag just in case. It was like one of those like, maybe they'll think I will. But got down there, worked with their catching coordinator, Paul Hoover, who I think is one of the best coaches in any sport I've ever played in terms of teaching the technical aspects of it. And I remember like pretty early on, there were guys that were like AAA vets, and then some of like the really young guys, like younger than me, rookie ball guys that were down there early. And we were all doing the same sorts of drills. And at one point he came over to me, he goes, I bet you're wondering why the rookie ball guys and the AAA guys are doing the same thing. And I goes, yeah, I mean, you know, you're working with us, so everybody's doing the same thing. He goes, how am I going to teach you university level calculus if I don't teach you first grade addition, and then second grade, and then third grade, and then build it up like that? So everything that he did was like one tiny little focus that built on something for the next day, that built on something for the next day. So like I found myself, you know, it's my 5th day down there. We're working on just like turning your wrist to present a pitch. And he's telling me, oh yeah, that's a great job. You're doing a really good job. And I'm like, I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm just making the hand movement that you taught me. And then, you know, like halfway through spring training, there's a pitch that's down in the zone and I catch it and I did the hand movement. I went, that's it. Now I know what he was teaching me 2 weeks ago, because now that pitch at the bottom of the zone looks like a strike. I'm getting that call for my pitcher and stuff like that. So going there, it was a massive workload. I was the only player that didn't have a single early work hitting group that entire spring training. I got double defense every single day. So I was like just absolutely getting worn out. Managed to make the high A team, I think, just because I hit my way on. Caught probably in 30 games that year, DH'd most of the rest of the time. But it was interesting to just get into real games back there, having spent that 5 or 6 weeks just doing nothing but thinking about it and learning it. That was the first time that I ever really understood what it meant to have the game speed up on you. Like I couldn't control my brain. I remember I'd be sitting back there and going like, all right, I need to throw a fastball here. There's a runner on first base, so I got to make sure I take a peek at him, make sure you're in your ready stance. If he spikes it, you got to block. If that guy runs, you got to throw. Make sure you're presenting it for the umpire. Don't get hit by the bat. And like I could hear that voice in my head, just like 1,000 different things. So it was crazy to kind of go through that. And then as you get more used to it, there are less of those things that you're thinking about and trying to process, and it becomes a little bit easier to just kind of like go out and play. So it was an interesting transition, to learn the position, because like I had played with some really good catchers who I totally didn't appreciate how hard it was what they did, and then also to just kind of like get comfortable with it and get to a point where I could call a game, I could control the running game, I could worry about all the things I needed to worry about without it being like a panic.
That's awesome. That's awesome. All right, so kind of last question for our pitchers that we mainly work with. As a catcher, you work with a lot of pitchers, and there's a kind of like earlier, there's a lot of advice you could give. But was there one thing that from working with them and seeing them that stands out to you, that if you had a high school pitcher, you would suggest or give them as something to really focus on?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, and it's also the simplest thing, is just be in attack mode from the minute that you take the ball. Hitting's difficult. Everybody always does, the 3 out of 10, you're a Hall of Famer thing. But getting back there and catching, that was when I really started to understand it. There were times when, you call for a pitch in a certain spot, the pitcher misses and you still get the out, or you get a swing and a miss. Be in attack mode, have the confidence to just throw the pitch. Played against Judge. I played against Joey Gallo. Those guys had days when they went over. Like, we didn't make perfect pitches every single time, but hitting's hard. So when you go out there and you say, you know what, I'm just going to throw strikes, I'm going to get ahead, I'm going to make it more difficult on them, hitting becomes a really tough task. But when, the pitchers aren't confident and they're trying to feel for it, and now you're in a 2-0, 2-1, 3-1 count, that's when hitting gets a lot easier because you can eliminate everything, and all that you're looking for is that, dead red fastball. So again, attack mode, that was something that we had kind of talked about, John, you and I, when we were at Stony Brook, with like, if you charted a team's batting practice, not a single guy on a high school team, not a single guy on a college team is going to square up 100% of his BP swings. And that's, 55 miles an hour, fastball down the middle every single time. So if they're not going to square that up, why are you not going to go at them with my best fastball, my best breaking ball, my best changeup, whatever it is? Make those guys do something to get on base. Don't make it easy on them.
Yeah, that's. I mean, we talk about that all the time, and it sounds simple, but it's really hard for a lot of guys to trust their stuff. Just trust the process, trust their stuff.
Yeah.
So I think that's great advice. We're gonna finish with the fun stuff. So our kids, they send us these questions, and they're, you have a great resume. So the first one, and these could be quick, just shoot them off, or you could go into it, whatever you want. So, one, who is the best or most famous pitcher you ever hit against?
So I'll break it into two. The best one I ever faced, was like the most impressive, was Tyler Glasnow. Now with the Rays, he was with the Pirates when I faced him. I remember we faced him early in the year. Our manager tells us in our hitters meeting, monster fastball. He's going to be sitting anywhere 98 to 100. And, I'm like, I'm going to take my first at bat. I'm going to see a strike just to kind of gauge the speed. And I took the first one, and I'm like, oh my God, this guy doesn't have a chance. Like, it was a meatball. The second 0-1, I see him lift his leg, and I hear the umpire say strike two. Never saw the pitch. Stepped out. I went, okay, I must have blinked, had something in my eye, whatever. Lifts his leg, strike three. I turn around, I walk back to the dugout. And after the game, my manager was going through the notes and whatever. I said to him, what did he throw me in that first at bat? And he shows me the pitch tracks. 91, basically dead down the middle. It was almost a get me over. Then he went 97 down and away, and then 99 on the knees at the black. And I'm like, okay, that's not even fair. And then that fall, he makes the MLB Top 100 Prospect show. And I'm sitting there watching this, and they're talking about it, and look at this fastball that he displays. And I'm like, man, that hitter looked badly overmatched. Then I'm like, oh my God, that was that at bat. And I rolled it back and I watched it. I'm like, oh, that's me punching out on TV. That sucked. So he was probably the best one I faced. In terms of most famous, Carl Edwards Jr. with the Cubs, Stroman. I faced Snell before I was with the Rays. I know I didn't do anything against those three. Jose Barrios from the Twins, I had his number in 2014. I got him for a home run, a double, 3 or 4 RBIs. So that was kind of the big one for me.
That's great.
Yeah.
Next question. Who is someone you have gotten to either train with, in spring training, play with, or that was, they say, a wow moment, but just one of those moments where wow, I used to watch you, or I've heard about you. One of those, was there ever one of those moments you had?
Yeah, the wow one in terms of oh my God, I used to watch you. I got called up to play in a big league spring training game with the Rays. It was the Rays against their AA team in Montgomery, the last day of spring training. So we got to fly with the big league team, stay in the locker room with them and whatever. we go out to stretch. We do all of our sprints, and then we line up. We sit down in the outfield and start doing all of our band work and stuff. And Longoria turns around and he goes, "Hey, what's up, man? I'm Evan." And I'm like, "What's up, man? You're Evan?" Like, everybody in the ballpark knows who you are. Every single person here wants your autograph, probably including me. And I'm like sitting there having this conversation with Evan Longoria, and I'm like, this is something different. Then, like, in terms of playing against a guy that was a wow guy, in 13 in low A, I played against Correa, and it looked like he was playing on easy mode. Like, no matter what we threw him, he hit it 115 miles an hour. He ran like the wind. We'd hit a ball to the third baseman. He's playing shortstop. He'd like run behind the third baseman, pick it up behind the bag down the line, and throw the guy out with like the easiest throw that came out, just like an absolute cannon. So it was like, why is this guy even in our league? Like, just send him to the big leagues already. He was so good.
All right, and last one. You were drafted twice, and a lot of guys just dream of being drafted. You know, one thing I want to add to that, when you didn't sign the first time, was there ever a worry, like I might not get drafted again, or did that ever cross your mind? And then being drafted twice, was that what's something that an accomplishment for yourself to show, some guys never get that opportunity?
Yeah, it was two totally different experiences. The first time it was almost more, I was able to it was more like a fan. I knew I wasn't, top pick material. I knew I wasn't going to be, in most cases, I wasn't going to end up signing out of high school. I just, that was just me being honest with myself. When I got the call, I was actually in my dad's car. We were driving home from lunch, and I get a call from a number I hadn't seen before. I pick it up, and, "Hey, it's Kevin Brienne from the Blue Jays. I wanted to let you know we drafted you in the 43rd round." And I'm covering the microphone on my phone. I'm like, "Dad, it's the Blue Jays. I got picked." And it was so exciting because I grew up going to probably 40 Blue Jays games every season with my grandfather. He was a season ticket holder. So for that to happen was just man, this is full circle for me. They apparently drafted a whole bunch of Canadian guys in the last 5 to 8 rounds as a sort of a thing for baseball in Canada and Toronto and stuff like that. So I knew I wasn't going to sign there. Was there ever a time that I didn't think it would happen again? Maybe at some point, early freshman year, just if things weren't going well, it was oh man, maybe, that was my shot. But I always kind of had it in my mind once I was filling out those forms as a high school kid that if I put in the work to get to here in high school, then I'm going to go put in more work with better coaches, better players. It's only going to make me a better player down the road. So it was always just kind of the path that I had sort of put in my head. I'm going to figure out a way to get to college, paycheck, manage to get drafted. Now I'm going to go to college. I'm going to figure out a way to get drafted somewhere high enough that I can, make it worthwhile to go. So that second time was more of, like I said, that outlook of man, I'm going to be a Padre one day. This is, now my future. So yeah, the first time was just an incredible experience. I went home and took a picture wearing my hat and oh, I'm a Blue Jays fan. I'm drafted by the Blue Jays. It's pretty cool. But yeah, that second time was all right, now the work really has to start.
Max, thank you so much. That was amazing.
That was really, really good.